How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is Deck Ready, my channel all about the Steam Deck and other gaming handhelds. In today's video, I've got three topics to cover. The first one is the ROG Ally is a year old, so I'm going to compare it to the Steam Deck where it's at now and let you know which one you should be keeping your eye on. Second on the list, the Steam Deck is on sale right now, but it's only a couple of models, and I'm going to give you my actual recommendation. And third, I'm going to highlight a cool trick to install every single launcher on your Steam Deck with one script. So let's jump into this first topic here. So I've been playing on my ROG Ally lately because I got an email from Asus that they are going to give me a review unit. It's not going to be one of these preview units that all of my contemporaries are getting that's not finished hardware. What I am getting is the finished product, so my video on it will be up closer to the release of the handheld. But I haven't used the Ally in a while and I needed a reason to refamiliarize myself with it, and then the new update for Forza Horizon 5 came out and you can get a Mustang Dark Horse, which is a car I want to drive with my racing wheel in that game, and you got to do the seasonal challenges and everything like that to get it. So I booted up Horizon 5 on my Steam Deck and it's not really a great experience. I always see it recommended on like top game lists and everything like that as a great Steam Deck option. I mean, if you want to get it at 60, you have to run it at the lowest possible settings, and I'm just going to be honest, it looks like and I'd rather just play it on my main PC. And if you want to do a 30 FPS preset, you basically have to run it at low because of the texture streaming issues that cause major stutter. Like you'll get to a point of the map where it's loading in the next part of the map and there will be a hard stutter spike. If that's not something that bothers you, then I would say, yeah, you could probably try it at low. But if you have an ROG Ally, it's the perfect device for this game. I'll talk about that a little bit later because I want to kind of go through this as hardware, software, and then I'll talk about the games. As far as the hardware goes, we all know that the ROG Ally has had its fair share of issues. The biggest issue it's had has to do with its SD card slot. Basically, Asus has never confirmed that this is happening, but what was going on was the thing was running so hot that it was frying people's micro SD cards. They did a patch for the device that kind of changed around some of the fan curves, and that seems to have fixed the issue for a lot of people, but not nearly all of the people, and it's just been not great. So with the Ally X coming out soon, one of the biggest changes there is moving the SD card slot, but my firsthand experience has been decent with the ROG Ally Original when it comes to SD cards. I'll explain. So when I'm playing in handheld mode, I do have a 1TB SD card inside of it, and I just gotta be honest, I've never had an issue with it. It always mounts just fine. It's never been fried. I've also transferred it to my Lenovo Legion Go and it worked just fine because I keep a Steam library on it and you can transfer it back and forth. But where I did run into issues was when I was using my old XG Mobile graphics card. I got the 4091 on a deal on eBay. It was refurbished, and for about 3 months that was my main gaming PC. So my ROG Ally was effectively not a handheld. It was docked at my desk, which itself was like a mobile dock I could plug my keyboard, mouse, and monitor into, and it was a pretty good experience. It kind of bottomed out thanks to the Z1 Extreme getting throttled, so I kind of threw my hands up, got rid of the XG Mobile, and then got a Razer Blade with a 4090 in it, and everything's been great since then. And then I kind of put the ROG Ally down. But long story short, when I would use the XG Mobile for extended periods of time playing games like Starfield or the Crew Motorfest, basically what would happen is the SD card would kind of pop out of the SD card slot. So I'd prefer that to frying it, obviously, but you know, you don't want to deal with that when you have a device that has a very expensive micro SD card in it. So I'm glad that they're going to address that. But the counter I have is that I've never run out of space on the ROG Ally because it is a second device. I basically play games that don't work on the Steam Deck on it. So I've never run out of storage, and upgrading the SSD is extremely easy. So if you are going to pick one up, I would just recommend buying a bigger SSD and reinstalling Windows and then just having everything be on the SSD, because then you're not going to deal with the SD card issue. That's not making an excuse for them or anything. It's just like the best way to do it from my perspective. And beyond those issues, I think the hardware is pretty good. The one big gripe I have with this device is the joysticks. They're extremely tall, but they don't have a lot of travel. So when you're playing a game like Forza Horizon 5, I play on the simulation difficulty, and I found that like you just don't get enough fine control out of the ROG Ally to really make yourself competitive. So I've kind of like reverted my gameplay where anything online or competitive I'm doing on my main gaming PC with my racing wheel, and anything that's like knocking out seasonal challenges or doing campaign races or something like that, that's what I do on the ROG Ally. I do really like the face buttons still. They're nice and punchy. I think I might prefer them to the Steam Deck OLED, honestly, just because they have a lot of travel and they're a little bit looser. They feel like full-size controller buttons. When it comes comes to the joysticks though, I'm giving the edge to the Steam Deck OLED just because they are that much better, and I just flat out don't like the joysticks on the ROG Ally. So it's not like I really have much defense to throw at the ROG Ally there. I just think the OLED's joysticks are better overall, but I've heard that they fixed the joysticks for the ROG Ally X, so I'm excited to try that out. And that kind of brings us to the software experience. I mean, Windows on a handheld is held back by Windows. It's not really held back by the device you're on. They've done a good job, I would say, kind of reformatting the Xbox app to give it this like minimalist mode that you can use with a handheld. And I do like that the ROG Ally software allows it to switch between desktop mode and gamepad mode. I found that it treats Steam as a game all the time, so I do it manually, but using the joystick and then the triggers as the right and left mouse click, it's a good experience. You can even use the D-pad to filter between folders when you're going into the Steam apps folder, to use RTSS to limit games. And the only thing that I really hate about the ROG Ally software experience is, of course, the keyboard. Like, it never pulls up the keyboard automatically, and when you pull up a keyboard over a game, it's like a 50-50 shot on whether or not it'll close, 50-50 shot on whether the game will crash. It's a Windows issue. I wish Asus could figure out a way to build the keyboard to work like it does on the Steam Deck, but I'm not really willing to throw that criticism at them because, again, it is a Windows issue. I hope Windows and Microsoft are working on a better version of the keyboard that's more optimized for gaming handhelds. Once you get past that pain point though, I do mostly use big picture mode. I don't really play Xbox games. I don't have a Game Pass subscription anymore, and I don't care. I'd rather just play on Steam. And once I'm in Steam, I use big picture mode. That makes it effectively work like a Steam Deck, and everything works like a charm. But the biggest issue, of course, is battery life. This thing is 100% a tethered console. I know people come up with all their power profiles and settings and everything like that that you can use to get decent performance and decent battery life, but like the thing is so powerful that I always want to be running it in turbo mode, so the battery life is just abysmal. I play it in my backyard without being plugged in because I get a solid 90 minutes out of Forza Horizon 5 on it, but like I'm not taking this thing out of the house. I've been on a few trips this year. I went to LA, I went to North Carolina. I had the ROG Ally and the Steam Deck sitting in front of me. Every time I'm choosing the Steam Deck OLED just because the battery life is that much better. The ROG Ally X, again, is supposed to have much better battery life based on the previews we've seen. I have to wait to get my hands on it, but the one I'm talking about right now, the battery life is absolutely abysmal if you want to get the most performance out of it, which is kind of like the whole point of buying one over a Steam Deck. And that brings me to the games. Look, I use this thing for Destiny 2. I use it for Forza Horizon 5. Basically any game that doesn't work or doesn't play well on the Steam Deck, that gets shunted over to my ROG Ally. And playing Forza Horizon 5 on this thing has been an excellent experience. I set up a 900p image profile so I can play the game at 900p. I can't believe the performance I get out of the Z1 Extreme with this. Like, knowing how badly the Steam Deck runs that game, it's like magic how much better it runs on the ROG Ally. And I mentioned that the joysticks are a little imprecise for that game, but for what I was doing, earning credits to get a car, it was the perfect little handheld to sit on the couch and watch the Grand Tour while I'm trying to earn this car in the game. Destiny 2, another great example of a game that doesn't work on the Steam Deck because of the anti-cheat, and beyond that, when you're playing it on the Ally, it runs really well. You can get 30 FPS out of it reliably playing at medium, and it's an older game, but it still looks really good. Beyond that though, there's not a lot of games that I really default to on the ROG Ally. I bought the Patreon for EmuDeck so I could set up emulation because of the cloud saves. I got that all going on my main PC when the Ally was my main PC. I used it a little bit to transfer the saves back and forth, but with emulation, I'm always defaulting to the Steam Deck. And as good as the ROG Ally screen is, I love that it can do 720p, 900p, 1080p. That's awesome. I'm always going to go with the Steam Deck OLED because the OLED screen just looks that much better. So if you're into Windows, you play a lot of online games, you play a lot of Xbox Game Pass games, obviously the ROG Ally is a no-brainer. And despite a lot of my problems with it, I think it is probably the best Windows handheld I've used. I've tried out the Legion Go. I don't really like it because of the size. I've tried a bunch of, what are they called? IA's devices. Like, I've had the Slide, I've had the like smaller IA Neo Mini. I just don't like their form factor, and their battery life also sucks, and their speakers are abysmal. So it's not like there's a ton of competition for the Ally outside of the Steam Deck, but as far as Windows devices go, I really like this thing. If I only had the Ally, I wouldn't be disappointed with it. The only reason I have issues with it is because I have something to directly compare it to that I like a little bit more, which is the Steam Deck OLED. And the one factor that always stopped me from wholeheartedly recommending the Ally to people who want a Windows gaming device, of course, has been the price. It was like $650, I think, when it came out. It might have been pushing $700, but now people return this thing all the time, probably because using Windows on a handheld is just like experience. So you can go to Best Buy and there's open box ones all over. Like go to your Best Buy, you'll probably see at least 5 or 10 open box ones available. I did a quick glance. I called my local Best Buy and I could pick one up today for $450, which is a far cry from what it costs new. And honestly, at that price, I'd have no issue recommending it, even with the joystick issues and the battery life issues and the SD card issues. For $450, you're in a good price point, and a lot of the issues you can kind of forget about because you got it for a great price. So yeah, a year later, I like this thing a lot more than I thought I would. You know, I'm not getting deep in the weeds with it. It's not my main device. It only was for a few months and I wasn't even using it as a handheld. But speaking of prices, the Steam Deck is currently on sale, which is my second news story. So yeah, the Steam summer sale is going on until July 11th, and Valve, they've been a little bit stingier this year, I would say, with the Steam Deck price drops. I remember around Christmas, they dropped pretty much all of them by a pretty good margin, but this time it's only 2 options that are available and they're only dropping by 15%, and I personally wouldn't go with either of them. So the entry-level Steam Deck, the 64GB LCD, which is basically discontinued, they're trying to sell through the stock that they have, you can get that right now for $296. So if you're not into the OLED, which I'm going to explain why I think you should be in a little bit, this is a good option with the mentality going in that you should probably just buy a bigger SSD. When the SSDs were coming out, those 2230 size ones, they were astronomically expensive. I think for my 1TB one that I did a video on, it's one of the first videos on this channel, I think I paid like $300 for it, and now you can get a 1TB one for around $100 to $150. So with that in mind, save the 15%, get the 64GB one, buy an SSD for like $100. You're at around $400 with a terabyte, which is actually around the price that you're going to pay right now for a 256GB LCD model, because that's on sale for $381. So if you're able to get an SSD for $100 for that 64GB one, you're basically getting 4 times the storage as the 256 one for the same price. I think that's a great deal, but that's really where the sales end. I think it's still worth it to just go with one of the OLED models, honestly, just because as someone who's used this thing from before it came out up until now, using the OLED, I can't go back. It's not just the screen that's better. They've improved every button, they've improved every trigger, they've improved the trackpads, they've improved the screen, of course, because it's an OLED screen. They've improved the chassis. It just feels like a much sturdier, more secure console than what you get out of the LCD model. Like, I had a lot of hardware problems with the LCD model just from 2-inch drops that would break the thing into pieces, basically. Like the bumper would fall apart. But now I have the OLED, a limited edition model. I do baby it a lot more than my LCD one. I have had no issues with this thing hardware-wise, other than the B button sticking, which apparently happens to all of them. So I'm not really too critical of that. If it becomes a big issue, I'll probably RMA it, but for right now, it's working just fine. Also, one of my big criticisms of the ROG Ally is battery life, and the battery life on the original Steam Deck, I'd say, was decent. It wasn't great. It was barely good. Like, you'd get a solid couple hours out of AAA games. You could get 3 to 4 out of emulating games or smaller indie games. That's solid. That's like on par with the Nintendo Switch, basically. But with the OLED, they were able to increase the size of the battery to 500 milliamp hours, and this thing never dies. Like, I play it for hours and hours and hours. I play Elden Ring on it. I play racing games like Need for Speed Hot Pursuit Remastered. I play Burnout Paradise. I emulate games from the PS1 era, the PS2 era, the PSP era. Everything I throw at this thing does not stop it from lasting an entire flight, whereas with the LCD model, I had to be tethered to a battery bank at all times. I actually lost my battery bank when I was in North Carolina, and I don't feel the urge to buy another one, honestly, just because the battery life in the OLED is that good. When this thing's been out for around a year, that's when I'd personally expect to see the price drop by around 15%, and at that point, I'd say it's a no-brainer purchase. But if you've been kind of hemming and hawing, you don't have a Steam Deck or an ROG Ally, or your LCD is looking a little worse for wear, I think it's worth not getting a new LCD for a cheaper price and upgrading it, but getting an OLED model for a little bit more money. My money's on the 512 gigs, save the $100 and get a micro SD card to give you an extra terabyte of storage. You'll be good to go for the foreseeable future. And I don't think you have to worry about them releasing the Steam Deck 2 this fall or anything like that. I think that thing is 2026 at the earliest. Of course, I'd love to be wrong because I want more performance, but I think it's going to be a little bit longer of a wait before we get a brand new Steam Deck. And finally, I wanted to highlight a little script you can use for free right now on your Steam Deck that's going to make using other launchers like Epic or Ubisoft or EA or the myriad like Rockstar, any of those, a lot simpler, and it's called non-Steam launchers. I don't know how I forgot that or why I have to look it up. I guess I'm just crazy. But basically what this does is it doesn't only install the launcher for you, it installs the correct Proton GE, and then it adds these launchers to Steam, gives them art and also controller profiles so you can interact with them much easier than if you installed them yourself. So if you're someone who's collected a bunch of games on the Epic Game Store and you want to play them on your Steam Deck, this is obviously a great tool for that. If you're someone who for some reason owns GTA 5 and Red Dead Redemption 2 through the Rockstar launcher, or the GTA Classic Collection through the Rockstar launcher, this will install that for you and get everything set up. If you're someone like me who likes to play old racing games, it's a great option for the EA launcher. Ubisoft is the one that sucks. I mean, even if you get it installed right through this script, they're going to update it and break their launcher. I really wish they would just stop with the launcher and allow you to play games without having Uplay logged in at all times. But until then, every other launcher should be easy to set up and run just fine with this new alternative to doing it yourself. I'll leave a link to that down in the description. But yeah, that's all I've got for today's video. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching and shape on.